My name is Arthur. A story that began with nothing and ended with everything. I was an orphan boy who never knew his parents. The world outside had families, warmth, and laughter every night. But inside those orphanage walls, I only had the children beside me. I had no money. No name. No powerful family behind me. But I had one thing that no one could ever take away. Kindness. Every single morning, I woke up before the sun rose outside. I quietly walked to the well before any child woke up. I carried heavy buckets of water across the cold stone floor. I filled each cup carefully before the children opened their eyes. When they woke up, I was already kneeling to tie their shoes. Their small fingers would pat my head while I bent down quietly. I made sure every child had food on their plate before mine. Sometimes I went hungry so that the youngest ones could eat fully. Nobody told me to do these things. Nobody gave me orders. I did it because their smile was the only reward I needed. Not because anyone told me to. But because they were my family. To those children, I was not simply an older boy in the hall. I was not just a brother they happened to live beside. I was home. Grandmother ran the orphanage with a gentle but firm steady hand. She was old, but her eyes were warm and always watching everything. She called me her most dependable boy since the very first day. Every evening, she would sit beside me and speak about life softly. She told me that kindness was a seed planted deep in the earth. She said it grew slowly, but it always grew toward the light. I believed her. I always believed her every single quiet word. I never knew then how right she truly was about all of it. As I grew older, I took on more responsibilities inside the orphanage. I fixed broken windows when the rain came pouring through them. I painted the walls when the color faded and everything looked gray. I read stories aloud at night when the little ones could not sleep. Their eyes would grow heavy and close slowly as my voice carried on. I taught the older children how to write their own names clearly. I helped them with their school lessons when teachers were not present. The orphanage was small, but I made it feel as big as the world. Because inside those walls, every child deserved to feel like they mattered. But late at night, when the children were sleeping peacefully around me, I would lie awake and stare at the ceiling for a long time. A question lived inside me that I could never find an answer to. Who were my parents? Where did I come from? Why was I left alone? Grandmother never had full answers. Only silence and a warm, gentle hand. She said my father was a good man who left too soon from this world. But she never told me more than that. I never pushed her to speak. I buried the question deep inside me and kept moving forward every day. One ordinary afternoon, everything in my life changed without any warning at all. I was helping the children as usual in the courtyard outside. A long black luxury car stopped slowly in front of the orphanage gate. It was unlike anything I had ever seen parked in our small street. I looked up once, then turned back to the child I was helping. But someone stepped out of that car and stood very still at the gate. A tall man in a dark suit with silver hair and steady calm eyes. He did not speak. He did not enter. He simply stood there watching me. He watched as I carried water. He watched as I tied the children's shoes. He watched as I laughed with them, wiped their faces, held their hands gently. I did not know then who he was or why he had come here. I did not know that he was the leader of the Heaven family. One of the most respected and powerful families in the entire city. After a long while, he finally opened the gate and walked toward me. His footsteps were slow and deliberate on the stone path between us. The children stopped playing and looked at him curiously without saying a word. He stopped right in front of me and looked at me for a moment. His eyes were searching, as if he were looking for something familiar in mine. So you are Arthur. I nodded quietly. My voice was not ready to speak yet at that moment. I have been searching for you for a very long time now. My heart stopped for one full second inside my chest when he said that. I was deeply confused. Why would a man like him search for me? Why would someone so powerful come all the way to this small orphanage? He took a slow breath and then he spoke in a very gentle voice. Your father was my closest and most trusted friend in this world. He was a man of great honor. A man who always chose what was right. He passed away in a terrible car accident many years ago. I am so sorry. I searched for you in every city, every town, every possible place I knew. I am truly sorry that I came to find you so very late. Something deep inside my chest broke open when he finished speaking to me. Like a door that had been locked shut for 16 long years finally opened. Something broke inside me. And something else healed at that exact same moment. He walked with me to grandmother's small and quiet room at the back. She already seemed to know something important was coming toward us that day. She looked at him, then at me, and her old eyes filled with tears. They spoke for a long time while I sat quietly and listened to everything. He explained who he was, why he came, and what he wanted for me. Grandmother wiped her eyes slowly with the corner of her old cotton cloth. Then she looked at me with the warmest eyes I had ever seen from her. Arthur, she said softly. Go and live the life you were meant to have. We will always stand beside you no matter where this road takes you. Come back and visit us whenever your heart calls you home to us. I held her hands for a long moment without saying anything at all. Her hands were small and wrinkled, but they held my whole world inside them. And then it was time for me to say goodbye to my children. I walked to the courtyard where they were all gathered quietly together. They already knew something was different today. Children always sense these things. I bent down slowly until I was at the same level as their eyes. Their small faces were looking at me with wide and uncertain quiet eyes. Some of the younger ones already had tears running down their soft small cheeks. I took a slow breath and spoke to them as calmly as I could manage. Be good boys and girls for grandmother, okay? She needs you to be strong. I will come back to visit you regularly. I promise from the bottom of my heart. You are my family. That will never change. Not today. Not ever. Never. They all ran toward me at once and wrapped their arms tightly around me. All of them at once. Their small hands holding me as if they would not let go. That hug was the heaviest and the most beautiful thing I have ever carried. Even today, many years later, I still feel those arms around me when I close my eyes. That same night, I entered a world I had never imagined in my life. The grand mansion of the Heaven family rose before me like a mountain. Tall iron gates opened slowly as the car drove through the long driveway. Lights lined the pathway like stars that had fallen down to greet us. The entrance hall was bigger than the entire orphanage building I grew up inside. I stood at the entrance and felt something I had never felt before in my life. Not wonder. Not excitement. Something much closer to being deeply, completely lost. At the top of the entrance steps, a young woman stood waiting quietly. She was dressed simply, but everything about her was clearly from a different world. Her hair was pulled back carefully and her posture was straight and still. Her eyes were sharp and they moved from her father to me without any warmth. Her name was Hannah. Daughter of the most powerful man in the Heaven family. She looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger walking into their home. Not rude. Not kind. Just completely uncertain about what I was doing there. I understood. I was uncertain too. We were both strangers standing in the same moment. Her father gestured for us to walk together toward the dining room for dinner. We walked side by side in complete silence. Neither of us said a single word. The dining room was long and quiet with soft light falling across the table. Plates were arranged perfectly. Servants moved silently along the walls beside us. I sat across from Hannah and tried to eat with hands that had forgotten how to be still. Everything felt too large, too quiet, too perfectly arranged for someone like me. Then her father set down his glass and the whole room became even more still. He cleared his throat once. Then he spoke with a calm and decided voice. "Hannah, you will marry Arthur." The words fell into the silence like a stone dropped into still, cold water. Hannah's fork stopped halfway to her plate and her whole body went completely rigid. She looked at her father. Then slowly at me. Then back at her father again. I stopped eating. My hands went still. My mind went completely blank in that moment. Silence fell across the dining table like a heavy curtain pulled over the window. Hannah froze. And so did every single part of me that had dared to hope. Later that night, I heard Hannah speaking with her father behind closed doors. Her voice was controlled but the pain and disbelief were clearly there underneath. "Father, why? Why him? You do not even know who he truly is yet." Her father's voice was quiet but it carried the weight of a final decision already made. "I know exactly who he is, Hannah. He is the son of my closest trusted friend. I watched him today. The way he cared for those children showed me his true character. A man who gives that much to others who have nothing will give his whole life to family." Hannah went quiet. But her silence was not agreement. It was simply the end of an argument she knew she could not win. In the Heaven family, the father's word was the final word. Always. Without exception. And so the marriage was decided. Not from love. Not from choice. From family honor alone. The wedding came quickly. A grand ceremony attended by the most important people in the city. There were flowers and lights and music that filled every corner of the large hall. People I had never met shook my hand and called me son of the Heaven family. I wore a suit that felt unfamiliar on my body, like wearing someone else's life. Hannah stood beside me, beautiful and composed, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I looked at her and made a quiet promise to myself that day during the ceremony. I would be patient. I would be kind. I would give her time to know me truly. Because I understood. She had not chosen this any more than I had chosen it. But I believed that patience and kindness could build something real between two people in time. The first weeks of our marriage were polite and careful and completely empty of warmth. We shared a home but we lived in entirely separate invisible worlds inside it. I woke early and made breakfast. She ate quickly and left without looking at me. I asked how her day was. She answered with one or two words and moved on. I left small notes of encouragement near her coffee cup every single morning. I do not know if she ever truly read them. She never mentioned them to me. I tried to find small things that might make her day even a little easier. But Hannah moved through our shared life as if I was simply furniture that had been placed there. For 2 full years, I did not stop trying to build something real with her. I brought her flowers every Friday without fail, even when she never acknowledged them. I waited up for her late at night when her work kept her out until midnight. I left warm food on the table so she would not have to eat dinner alone in the cold. When she was sick, I sat outside her door the entire night until the morning came. I protected her silently from small things and from larger things that she never even noticed. I carried the weight of this marriage alone because I believed it was the right thing to do. All I wanted from the very beginning was a real family that I had never had before. A family where someone truly knew me. where someone was glad I was beside them. But to Hannah, I was only a stranger placed inside her life without her permission or choice. She treated me with basic courtesy. But courtesy and love are two completely different things entirely. Her assistant was a man named Leo. Smart, well-dressed, always calm and collected. He had worked with Hannah long before I ever arrived inside her life. I noticed early on that she smiled differently when Leo was somewhere in the room. A real smile. The kind she never once gave to me in 2 full years. Her voice changed when she spoke to him. Lighter. More alive. More like the real Hannah. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself to trust what I hoped was true. But something in the deepest part of me already knew what I did not want to know. One evening I walked toward the office room. I had brought her gift in a small bag as a quiet surprise for her. But as I got closer, I saw that she was not alone inside the office that evening. Leo was in the near seat. Their voices were soft and very close to each other. I stopped walking. Their eyes met in a way that two people's eyes only meet when they belong to each other. And then Leo moved slowly toward her. And she did not move away from him. Hannah and Leo speak about projects. At the time, I thought of it as imagination. One evening I walked toward the car park to wait for Hannah to come home. I had brought her favorite food in a small bag as a quiet surprise for her. I saw her car parked in the far corner. I walked toward it with a small smile. But as I got closer, I saw that she was not alone inside the car that evening. Leo was in the passenger seat. Their voices were soft and very close to each other. I stopped walking. Something told me very clearly not to take another step forward then. Their eyes met in a way that two people's eyes only meet when they belong to each other. And then Leo leaned slowly toward her. And she did not move away from him. They kissed. I stood there in the empty car park holding a bag of food I had brought for her. I could not move. I could not speak. I could not make a single sound at all. No anger rose inside me. No voice came up from somewhere deep in my chest. Just a slow and quiet shattering of something I had been carefully building for 2 long years. No anger. No screaming. Just heartbreak. The deepest and most silent kind that exists. I turned around and walked back to the mansion alone in the dark that night. I set the bag of food on the kitchen table and sat down in the quiet room. I sat there for a very long time, not moving, not thinking, just breathing slowly. The clock on the wall ticked forward minute by minute through the long empty night. I thought about every flower I had brought her. Every note I had left by her cup. Every night I waited up. Every morning I woke early to make her life a little easier. 2 years of trying. 2 years of giving. 2 years of being completely invisible to her. And all along, her heart had already belonged to someone else standing right beside her. When Hannah came home that night, I was still sitting in the same quiet chair. She stopped when she saw me. Something in my face must have told her I knew. I did not shout. I did not cry. I spoke in the calmest voice I could find inside me. I want a divorce, Hannah. She looked at me for a long moment. Then the anger came rushing through her like a wave. You cannot just decide that. What will my father say? What will the family say? Do you know what this will do to our family's reputation in this entire city? She argued for a long time. Words poured from her like water breaking through a wall. But I was tired. Too tired to argue back. Too tired to defend what had already ended. I was tired of giving everything I had to someone who had nothing left to receive it. I was tired of begging for love from someone whose heart lived somewhere else entirely. I looked at her calmly and said only one thing more before I left the room. I am not angry, Hannah. I am just done trying to hold something that was never mine to hold. The arguments went on for several days. The tension was heavy and thick between us. Her father called me into his study and looked at me with searching and careful eyes. I told him everything I had seen that evening in the car park without leaving anything out. He sat in silence for a long time after I finished. His expression did not change at all. Then he said quietly that he understood. That he was deeply, genuinely sorry for my pain. He called Hannah in and spoke with her privately while I waited outside the closed door. When she came out, her face was pale and tight and her hands were not completely still. She sat at the table. She picked up the pen. She looked at the papers for a long moment. Then she signed. And just like that, I was free. The very first place I went after everything was finished was back to the orphanage. I did not call ahead. I simply walked through the old familiar gate without any announcement. The moment the children saw me, they dropped everything they were doing and ran toward me. They jumped and called my name and wrapped their arms around me all at once. I held them all tightly and felt something loosen inside my chest for the first time in months. Grandmother stood at the door, watching with her warm and knowing eyes full of quiet understanding. She did not ask questions. She simply made tea and sat beside me as the evening fell softly. Being back in that small and humble place felt more like home than the mansion ever had. In the weeks that followed, I began to spend time alone and let myself breathe again. I went to the beach in the early mornings before the city had completely woken up. I sat on the cold sand and watched the waves move in and out with steady patience. Each wave came forward and then pulled gently back, and then returned again without fail. I thought about how the ocean never stopped moving no matter what happened on the shore. I trekked through the mountains on days when the city felt too small and too loud. I sat beside campfires at night and let the silence hold me in the open mountain air. The trees did not ask me questions. The stars did not expect anything from me at all. Slowly, day by day, I was releasing the pain that nobody had ever noticed I was carrying. And then one quiet evening, life surprised me in the gentlest possible way it could. I was sitting alone at a small cafe near the beach, drinking my coffee slowly. The cafe was calm and the sound of the waves came softly through the open door. I was just beginning to feel something close to peace for the first time in very long. When I stood to leave, I turned and walked directly into someone coming through the entrance. Her coffee cup flew upward and spilled completely across both of us in one terrible moment. She gasped. I reached out to steady her by instinct before she could lose her balance completely. She looked up at me with wide surprised eyes and then she laughed a small embarrassed laugh. "I am so sorry," she said quickly. I was not looking where I was walking at all. Her name was Lisa. I thought it was simply an accident. A random moment of two strangers colliding by chance. But it was not an accident at all. I would not understand that until much later that evening. We sat back down at the cafe table and she told me the most unexpected story I had ever heard. 10 years ago, when she was young, she lived near the orphanage for a short period of time. Her grandmother's home was just 3 streets away from where I grew up inside those walls. She had seen me in the street a few times but we had never spoken even a single word. But one night, everything changed in a way that neither of us could ever have expected. Her father had powerful enemies, men who wanted to hurt him through the people he loved most. That night, 2 men grabbed her in the dark street near the corner of the old market. She screamed and fought but she was young and small and completely alone in the rain. And then I appeared from around the corner. I had been walking back from the market for the children. I saw what was happening immediately. I did not hesitate for even one single second at all. I grabbed her hand and pulled her away from them and ran through the narrow dark streets. The rain was heavy and the streets were slippery, but I did not slow down or look back once. I ran until we were far enough away and the footsteps behind us had completely disappeared. Then I looked at her in the rain and asked if she was hurt, if she was safe, if she was okay. She nodded. She was shaking. But she was safe and alive and unhurt because I had been there. I walked her home to her grandmother's door and then I turned and walked back into the night alone. She said after that night, her father learned what had happened in the dark street near the market. He was afraid for her safety and called her back into the family compound immediately. She was taken abroad for her university studies so that his enemies could not reach her again. She left before she ever had the chance to find me and say even one simple word of thanks. Years passed in a country far away. She studied. She worked. She built her own life carefully. But in the quiet moments between everything else, she always thought about the boy from the rain. When she finally returned home many years later, she tried to find me. She asked around quietly. But what she discovered stopped her completely and painfully in the middle of her search. Arthur was married to Hannah, a woman from one of the most powerful families in the entire city. She stood with that news alone for a long time. Then she made a quiet decision for herself. She would not disturb a married man. She would bury what she felt and focus on her own path. She built her business. She worked hard. She watched from a safe and quiet distance away from me. And then one afternoon, a message arrived from a mutual friend she trusted completely. 3 words that shifted the entire direction of the quiet life she had been building alone. Arthur is divorced. She sat with those 3 words for a very long time before she did anything at all. She asked herself if she still felt what she had felt for so many long and quiet years. And the answer came back immediately and clearly from somewhere deep inside her chest. Yes. She still felt it. She had never stopped feeling it. Not even for one single day. So she planned. She found out where I had been spending my time during my healing period. She knew about the beach cafe. She knew about the mornings. And she planned their meeting carefully. The spilled coffee was not an accident. The collision at the door was not random chance at all. It was 10 years of waiting, finally walking through one door and finding me standing on the other side. I sat across from her at that small cafe table and listened to every single word she spoke. I remembered the rainy night she described. I remembered the girl, the dark street, the man behind us. I had forgotten it long ago. It had been one moment among many difficult moments in my life. But for her, that one moment had never ended. It had stayed alive inside her for 10 entire years. As she finished speaking, she looked down at her hands and waited quietly without saying more. Something quiet and warm began to move inside my chest when she finally stopped talking. Not the desperate need I had once felt trying to reach Hannah. Something different and more steady. Something that felt like being genuinely seen for exactly who I was without any condition attached to it. I smiled. A real smile. The kind that comes from somewhere you had almost forgotten existed inside yourself. Maybe the first completely real smile I had given to anyone in a very, very long time. We began to spend time together slowly. No rush. No pressure. No expectation between us. We walked along the beach in the early mornings while the city was still asleep around us. She visited the orphanage with me on Sundays and sat with the children for long quiet hours. She tied shoes and carried water and read stories out loud just as naturally as breathing. The children loved her immediately and completely, the way children always love someone who is truly kind. Grandmother watched us from the doorway one afternoon and smiled without saying a single word to either of us. Her smile said everything she needed to say without using any words at all. Month after month, the space between us became smaller in the most natural possible way. Not because we forced it. Not because anyone arranged it. Because we both truly wanted to be there together. 6 months after that evening at the beach cafe, Lisa asked me to marry her properly. Not in a grand hall. Not surrounded by powerful families and important guests watching us carefully. I asked her at the orphanage. In the small courtyard where I had spent my entire childhood. The children were gathered around us. Grandmother stood at the door with tears running quietly down her face. Lisa looked at me with eyes that were clear and warm and completely certain of their answer. She said yes without any hesitation. Without any reservation. Without any condition or quiet doubt. The children cheered so loudly that the birds resting on the old wall flew up into the sky at once. We married 6 months after the night she walked through that cafe door and spilled her coffee everywhere. Not from pressure. Not from family honor. Not from obligation or arrangement or anything like duty. From long-awaited love. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Hannah's carefully arranged world was breaking apart slowly. After the divorce, Leo had remained close to her. She believed he was her true love and choice. She believed he had always seen her clearly, loved her genuinely, and chosen her freely from the beginning. She gave him her trust completely and without the careful walls she had kept up around herself before. But one afternoon, she went to meet him unexpectedly at his office to surprise him there. What she found waiting for her was not what she had built in her mind at all during those months. Leo was with another woman. Laughing. Close. In the same way he had once been close with Hannah. She stood in the hallway outside his open door and understood everything in one single terrible moment. The same betrayal she had once quietly given to Arthur had come back to find her at last. That night, Hannah sat alone for the first time in a very long while with nothing to distract her. And in that silence, she began to remember things she had spent 2 years refusing to acknowledge. She remembered the flowers that had appeared on the table every single Friday without fail. She remembered waking up to warm food already prepared when she came home late at night. She remembered the night she was sick and heard quiet footsteps outside her closed bedroom door. She remembered how he never once raised his voice at her. Never once made her feel small or unworthy. She remembered how he had protected her from small things and from larger things without ever being asked. She remembered how he had stayed beside her every single day even when she gave him nothing back in return. And she finally understood, in the quiet of her empty room, what she had done with all of that love. She had treated it as an obstacle. She had walked past it every day without ever once choosing to see it. Desperate and broken, Hannah tried to find me. She asked people who might know where I had gone. She went to the orphanage first. Grandmother looked at her for a long careful moment at the gate. Then she said gently but clearly that Arthur was not someone she could reach anymore. Hannah called mutual friends. She sent careful messages. She searched with the quiet desperation of someone finally awake. But then the news reached her from someone who knew both of us and meant no cruelty by it. Arthur had remarried. A woman named Lisa. The ceremony had been small and filled with genuine joy. Hannah sat very still with that information for a very long time. Unable to move. Unable to speak. She had been too late. Not by days. Not by weeks. By months. By years. By all the time she had wasted. Arthur already belonged to someone who had loved him across 10 years. He already belonged to someone who had chosen him, Lisa. Our life together was nothing like the grand and polished life inside the Heaven family mansion. It was quieter. Smaller. Warmer. More honest in every single moment we shared together. Lisa made tea in the mornings and brought it to me before I had even fully opened my eyes. She asked real questions about my days and waited for real answers before moving past the subject. She came with me every Sunday to the orphanage and never once treated it as an obligation at all. She learned every child's name. She learned grandmother's favorite stories. She learned everything that mattered to me. And I learned her too. Every quiet preference. Every small thing that made her genuinely laugh out loud. Every fear she carried carefully and every dream she held close to her chest in the evenings. We built something together that did not need to be announced. It simply existed quietly between us every day. In the end, I found a peace. Lisa found the love she had protected quietly inside her heart for 10 patient and faithful years. And Hannah was left alone with the echo of a love she had chosen not to see until it was gone completely. I do not tell this story to make anyone feel sorry for me or to point blame at Hannah. I tell it because I believe some love need to be recognized before it's become unattainable. Kindness is never wasted. Even when the person it reaches does not recognize it or receive it fully. It plants itself somewhere. In someone. In the world. And it grows quietly toward the light in its own time. The girl I pulled from the dark rainy street became the woman who pulled me from my own dark place. Grandmother was right all. Kindness always finds its way home. Always.